You're welcome back. Well, for the first half of 2021, total investments announcements stood at $10.11 billion compared to $5.06 billion same time last year. The impact of COVID-19 largely felt there. Well, also the foreign portfolio investments in Nigeria recorded a 77.4 year-on-year decline in the first quarter of 2021 to stand at $974.1 million. The main gauge of external sector confidence, which is the foreign portfolio investors, has plummeted 41.57% in the first 4 months of this year. Figures on domestic and foreign portfolio participation in equity trading for April 2021, published by the Nigerian Exchange Limited, show that foreign investors have reduced their stakes to 178.25 billion naira at the end of April. This is against 305.05 billion naira invested in corresponding period in 2020. Well, to help us understand both the domestic, the foreign, and all these figures, we have the Executive Secretary and Chief Executive Officer of Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission, Ms. Yewande Sadiku, joining us this morning. Good morning, Ms. Sadiku.
Good morning, Ini. Thank you for having me.
Well, good to have you, especially as your birthday is today and you decided to share it with us. I'd like to say happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday.
Nigeria celebrates with you.
You were not
today.
supposed to know that. You were not supposed to know
it's
that.
It's supposed to be a secret. Well, happy birthday, Ms. Sadiku, and thank you so much for sharing your birthday with us.
Thank you.
All right, so we heard about the domestic and the foreign portfolio investment. What's your overall view on both the domestic and the foreign? We saw the foreign going down, domestic picking up in some areas. What's your view, looking at both sides?
Foreign and portfolio investments will rise and fall, differently throughout the quarter, throughout the year. I think it's when you take a back look and you look at the overall trend over a period that you can properly see a picture of what's going on. But if I compare 2021 with 2020, clearly because of COVID, 2020 was a depressed year in terms of investment flows. That was expected. It was not expected only for Nigeria, it was expected globally. 2021, we expect recovery. The recovery has been somewhat slow, but that's also expected. But as we all get comfortable with working with the reality of COVID-19, investment flows should pick up. It is expected, though, that there's a possibility, there are two possibilities. One is that countries like ours, with our large population, underserved markets and the like, can truly benefit from investment flows.
This is a live Channels television event.
And exploitation of their competitive advantages. But there's also the possibility that people focus on the markets that are easiest for them to do business because they don't want to take the risk.
All right, so the report refers to announcements, and we know that the gaps between announcements and actual investment demonstrate investment potential. How much gap is in this first half investment announcement?
So we haven't seen the actual investment numbers for the first half. The actual investment numbers and the investment announcement numbers is normally a lag. It'll probably be at the end of the third quarter, for instance, that we'll see the flows for the first half of the year. But historically, there has been a gap between investment announcements and actual investments. This is not surprising. Investment announcements are made in advance, and investment announcements take a while to play out. Investment announcements that we make are also tied largely to the activities of direct investors, which take a while to birth from when they indicate their intentions to when they, actually implement. And, that time lag can be affected by a variety of things. It's slightly different from portfolio investors who have the capacity to move quickly in reaction to market opportunities. Even if direct investors wanted to take advantage of market opportunities or government policies that are favorable today, it will take a while for their actual investments to kick in. So the lag is not unusual.
All right. So we're looking at this H1 2021 investment by source now. Nigeria, that's domestic investments, overtook the United States to lead the list, accounting for 33% of investment, while the United States went from 42% to not even making the top 5 sources of investments at all. Should we be worried about this?
I will not draw too much of a conclusion from that. The nationality, if you like, of the investment announcements change from quarter to quarter. They change from year to year. And they're very tied to the specific kind of projects that are going on. So I wouldn't worry about a 1 quarter trend or a 1 year trend. It's when you look at it over a period. If you look at it over a 3-year period, we've only been doing this for about 3.5 years now. So we don't even have a long enough data set to comment on the trends. But I would not be worried about the changes from 1 quarter to the other. It's very, very tied to the kind of projects that were announced during the quarter.
All right, looking at the sectors, manufacturing overtook transportation and storage at 58%. Does this credit go to the effort of the federal government or for ease of doing business?
And again, I think it may be too early to tell. Remember, these are announcements. They are not actual investments yet. And because they're very project specific, it's a function of the projects that were announced in that particular quarter. And the total figure that you mentioned of 10.11 billion relates to the first half of the year, where we saw a stronger first quarter than second quarter. Again, that trend is not unusual based on the data that we've been gathering over the last 3.5 years.
Okay, so information technology was a major contributor to pulling the economy out of recession last year, especially with COVID. A lot of people went virtual. But now we saw that it went down from 32% to 4%. Well, we're happy manufacturing is leading, but having ICT at this time going down to 4%, that calls for concern, isn't it?
Again, it's not an unusual trend. A lot of the deals in the sector, 1, are private, 2, the amounts may not be announced. So even when a transaction is announced, it's not all the time that the value, of the deals are announced. If the values are not announced, even if we are aware of the activity, we cannot include the numbers, in our tracker. So that may well account for it. But certainly we find in that ICT knowledge space that there's a lot of interest in Nigeria.
Okay, so from what you're saying, are you saying there are some investment that are not captured in this report, and should we look for a way to capture it? Or, this is the informal sector, like you mentioned, the private sector. Should there be a way to capture it, or it doesn't really matter?
No, it's an excellent comment, Ini. In reality, it would be great if we could capture all investment announcements. But the report we put out, and we're very clear on the cover of the report, we're very clear in the report that the report is based on announcements that are tracked by NIPC's newsletter, which we put out 6 days a week. It is publicly announced transactions generally, or publicly announced, interest in deals. There's no requirement in Nigerian law for investors to advise anybody of the investments that they want to make. So it'll always be difficult to capture 100% of the universe of what is coming into the country. So this report serves as a proxy. It gives us a directional sense. We know it doesn't capture all, but it gives us a sense enough for us to, be able to advise senior government officials and give direction to government.
Okay,
All
well,
right.
I think we're having a bit of a
The
technical,
glitch there.
yeah, with Miss Sadiku. I'm sure we'll get her back. But I mean, like I was asking her,
Yeah.
to make plans, you need data. To make plans, you need data. And we're talking of data here about investments. So at least the country or the federal government can know the direction to take, the direction to channel its energy on.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, because for instance, when you look at ICT, you expect a whole lot more.
Yeah.
A lot of things actually came up in the ICT space between last year and this year.
A lot of startups in that
Yes.
space also. So you'd expect, to hear more,
Announcements or
announcements
investments.
going into the ICT sector. And also looking at states too, you can see that we still have, the oil-producing states getting
Yes.
all the attention. And
So that puts a lot of question mark on the efforts of the federal government to diversify the economy. If the leading state when it comes to investment announcement is still the oil-producing state, Akwa Ibom, Rivers State, Bayelsa, and then you have Lagos finding its way just somewhere down there.
It's not a good sign, and we need to start looking into serious diversification of the economy so that we can see,
it's not just about diversification, but it's also about making the economy very inclusive. I mean, like she said, the data is based actually on a newsletter by the NIPC, but how involved are, the private sector? How involved are Nigerians, in this? Because if we don't get the data, we might just be working, taking wrong decisions.
And also getting rid of policies that actually discourage, foreign investors. That's another.
Yes, because, foreign investors will look at the data to make decisions.
They would look at,
I think we have Ms. Sadiku back. Hello, ma'am. Are you back? Ms. Sadiku, are you back?
Thank you. My apologies. I didn't know. My device just went off.
Oh, yes. That happens.
Well, it's okay. So I don't know if you can pick up where your thoughts where you were.
Yes, please. If you just ask the question again.
Okay, so you were actually talking about the data. We're asking the ICT space, we're expected to see more, especially at this time, because even just around us, we see a lot of inventions and innovations have come up because of COVID, and yet we did not capture that. And you were saying that the NIPC actually depends on data from its newsletter. So when you went off, we're asking or discussing to see, is there no way of expanding the capture of the data? Because the right data leads us to take the right decisions, and it will help the economy at the end of the day.
You're right. The more data we have, the better informed the decisions that we make are, so that they're not based on anecdotes, they're based on actual facts. But gathering data that you have not been gathering before, will take some time. This report of investment announcement is something we put out now for the last 3.5 years. As I mentioned, there is nothing, I don't know whether you heard this before I was disconnected. There's no requirement in Nigerian law for investors to tell anybody what investments they are making. So it will always be difficult to capture 100% of what actually comes in, but a directional sense of what investors are doing, of what sectors they're looking at, of what parts of Nigeria, of what sectors, and states and the like they're looking at is useful. It is useful because it provides us with some directional guidance about the things that we need to be conscious of. But we certainly recognize that it is not 100%. I also think that it may not be, it may be difficult to then legislate or require investors to tell us 100% of what they're doing, because it's important as markets develop that we minimize the friction that investors experience in coming to Nigeria. Ideally, we should make it increasingly easier for them, not increasingly difficult for them. So we will continue to think about ways that we can capture the information that we need to make better informed decisions. But it cannot be by making the life of investors more laborious.
Okay, but before we let you go now, 7 months into the AFCFTA year, how has Nigeria maximized the window?
So trading has actually not started under the AFCFTA because the schedules that are required for that trading have not been fully adopted yet. So a lot of what many countries are doing, Nigeria inclusive, is fine-tuning and ramping up their implementation plans. And in Nigeria, there's been a fair bit of sensitization, one at the organized private sector level, so sort of sector by sector, and with the states. So there's been a fair bit of work that's going on with implementation at state level and with sector groupings. But trading under the AFCFTA has actually not started because the schedules have not been adopted.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll have to leave it there now. Yemade Sidiku is Executive Secretary, Chief Executive Officer, NIPC. And again, happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you so much. You too. All right. After the break, we'll discuss burning economic issues on our commodities market segments. That's in a moment. To stay with us. This is Business Morning.